So if you'd like to hear any lore, and I mean any lore whatsoever, go ahead and check out the Ghoulman Entertainment Patreon, because even at the $1 tier, your voice is heard when I pick this week's lore via a poll that the Patreon gets polled on. This week's lore comes to us, once again, by way of Patreon, on the Slog from Fallout 4. Now, the Slog is a settlement that I actually kind of forgot even existed, to be completely frank with you. And I remember when I was going through the wiki, the fallout.fandom.com, the Nukipedia, if you will, it's where I get all of my lore. When I was going through that, I remember sometimes I'll just go in. There used to be a button for random, and I used to just find things for that. But I'll just go through and I'll click on locations and I'll read through and I'll look at characters, and sometimes I write them down. One character I've written down because of this lore, because I forgot they existed. But I picked the Slog because I remember the Slog being pretty memorable. I know, redundant, but I remember it being somewhat like vaguely important, like vaguely an interesting place that I wanted to go to. I remember doing it in the beginning of my Fallout 4 run, and I don't think I've ever really been back. So reading this was a nice little catch-up for all of that. It's an entirely ghoul-run settlement. Once Mayor McDonough exiled them all from Diamond City. Now, like I said, I get all of my lore off of fallout.fandom.com, the Nukipedia, if you will. And there's a quote that I'd like to read directly from the wiki. The sole survivor can say, "Why did the mayor throw you out?" And Wiseman, a person who's there, a ghoul who is there in the Slog, responds with, "We're ugly. We turn feral and kill people. We give the kids nightmares." All the usual stuff we get from you smoothskins. Now, it's true that there was one incident in Diamond City where a ghoul turned feral and someone got hurt. But I ask you this, how many humans have suddenly turned violent and killed somebody? I've seen it more times than I care to admit. What if this place could be more than just a refuge for ghouls who aren't welcome elsewhere? What if it could also be an example of what we can do when we put our minds to something and work together? We want this to be a place that everyone looks forward to visiting, with smiling faces, good bargains, and great produce. Maybe we could take a second look, Maybe then they wouldn't see us as such monsters. And this is something that I really hope future Fallout fiction, canon fiction, the show, more games, kind of goes in upon. Because if I remember correctly, there is a Fallout game, I believe it's a more recent one, goes into the degradation of ghouls' brains and how every ghoul will eventually turn feral. They are the first and only generation of a dying breed. They can't reproduce. Ghouls can be remade. You see it in Camp Searchlight in New Vegas, how there are NCR soldiers that are then ghoulified when the attack happens. So they can be made after the fact. But many ghouls, especially one character I'm going to talk about a little bit later, who's in the Slog, he's well over 200 years old. He's seen the world change many times over in his lifetime because of the way the world works in Fallout's society. Because of this, I wish Fallout would really harp on that more. My dream in a game is that you get to play as a ghoul and the entire game changes if that happens. And I really hope that if that ability becomes present in the games, it's something that can hit me organically, that it's something I can just be walking around, I'm too irradiated, all of a sudden I go to shoot the gun and I notice that my hand's a little more wrinkled. And maybe I go into third person, I swing around, I've had a mask on, but I take my mask off and I see that my skin's starting to fall off. My beard isn't as full as it once was. It's a little more patchy. That's what I want to see. And I want to see how the world changes. And like, say I go back to my settlement or my vault, wherever the game starts, and the people don't talk to me the same. They don't look at me the same because I'm a ghoul. I want the world itself to be the character that shapes my character. Not just my action shapes my character, but the world does. And okay, yeah, you did that one quest that got you heavily irradiated. Maybe that's the contributing factor, because then you play this entire game with yourself of going, when did the world change for me? When was I was welcomed in this settlement, and then I was no longer welcomed in this settlement because of the way I look. No matter how high my charisma is, I can't get back in, and I want to because I really, really like that place. Things like that. And I appreciate whenever we get to see it, but there will come a time, and I have a feeling it's going to become sooner rather than later, where we're going to see ghouls the same amount we saw super mutants in New Vegas. It feels like it's only bound to happen. We're going to see people no longer existing, and to see that the Slog is kind of a safe haven in Fallout 4, I'm surprised I don't remember it more. I'm surprised I wasn't more excited when I first found it, in my memories at least, that it's a safe haven for ghouls, because I love ghouls so very much. I think they're one of the most interesting groups of people in the Fallout universe. Now, the Slog at one point in time was the Middlesex County swimming pools in the Commonwealth, and it is the only Tarberry bog in all of the Commonwealth. The sole survivor can ask Wiseman the Slog, how did you come up with a name like that? And Wiseman will say, we didn't. It was the caravan traders who started that. I started this place a few years back, but couldn't think of a name for it. Then, one day, one of the traders pulls up after it had been raining for hours, and he says he's never had to slog through so much mud in his life. I asked him if it was worth it, and he said for the best tarberries in the Commonwealth, it definitely was worth it. Now, believe it or not, that's really all the wiki, the Nukipedia, fallout.fandom.com, the Nukipedia if you will, has on the Slog itself. It has more on the characters that are there. And there are 5 named ghouls that inhabit the Slog, and then 3 miscellaneous just worker bees for the Slog. The first one being Wiseman, who I've pretty much talked about, a very kind, soft-spoken gentleman who has taken up the responsibility of taking the Slog into his own hands and building it up and wanting it to become more than just a farm, but a safe haven, a refuge, somewhere where ghouls can flourish, somewhere they can thrive. There's also Deirdre, a flirty settler and merchant of the Slog, a woman who you could trade with. There's Jones, a farmhand at the Slog, is quite upset about being kicked out of Diamond City, but doesn't really let that bother him. He'll have some interactions with Holly, another ghoul who is there, and she'll say, look, if we want to be respected by Diamond City, we have to produce the best tarberries the Commonwealth has. So he doesn't let his pettiness dig into his work. He focuses on what makes him happy, and that's growing the tarberries, and in turn, he turns a profit, and then he can also provide for the other ghouls that are coming there to show the world that ghouls aren't just zombies, shufflers, brain eaters. Then there's also Holly, who I just mentioned previously. If Holly asks the soul survivor if she's looking good, and the soul survivor says she is, she will say the soul survivor is looking pretty damn fine, and then ask if she would ever date a ghoul. And I was thinking about it when I wrote that. I don't think that there is anywhere in the Fallout universe outside of New Vegas where you can hook up with a ghoul. You can date a ghoul. You can have a relationship with a ghoul. I remember you can have sexual relationships in New Vegas with ghoulstitutes, as I always like to call them, the ghoul prostitutes, but not so much. Can you really do that? I mean, for Hancock, I guess, if he's like near you and you have a good relationship with him. I'm not a huge fan of romancing your companions. It's neat that it's there, but I don't need it. Do whatever you must, do whatever you will. But it's something that got me thinking. It's another thing of like, I want to be able to explore these characters, not just like that, but explore what makes them tick. And I think it'd be neat if you could have some sort of a relationship that isn't a companion, but is someone you continue to go back to, kind of the way Skyrim did it. Like an NPC that kind of lives in your house or something, or maybe it's just someone that you go see every now and again. I think that'd be really, really interesting. And finally, we have Arlen Glass, a character who I completely forgot existed, and I'm not going to go too much into who he is. I'm going to give you the basics of who he is, but I would like to do a lore segment on Arlen Glass to the point where I've written his name down, and I think I'm going to put him in next week's poll. Arlen Glass is the co-founder of Wilson's Automatoys and the lead designer up until October 21st of 2077. This is the creator of the Giddy Up Buttercup, which made hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, even though each Giddy Up Buttercup was $16,000. he has a tremendous backstory. He just wanted to make children happy. He just wanted to spread joy with the world. He just wanted to show everybody that there was still a little bit of magic left in the world. And there's a beautiful irony to the person who should have the happiest job just being miserable. And I don't really remember his quest. I remember doing it. I remember this being like, again, one of the first things I did and being like, damn, wow, okay, cool. I'm invested. And I remember collecting Giddy Up Buttercups for him. That's all I'm really going to say. Because like I said, I'd like to do an episode on him. I'm either going to do, I think next episode we're going to do it on a character. So I'm going to put him and somebody else from probably New Vegas in the poll for the lore. But a very, very interesting character. Again, I like to see what happened to a man who was once a human and is now a ghoul man. I'd like to see what happened to them after this goes off, after the events have transpired that create the world in such disarray. It's such an interesting thing for me to see, and to see a man who, again, is the man who made happy. He's the man who invented things for children to play and have fun with. To see all that, and then it's all gone because of greed. It's just interesting to me. That's all I really have on the Slog and its inhabitants. I hope you enjoyed, because that is this week's lore. Hey everybody, wasn't that great? Didn't you enjoy that? A little bit of Fallout lore to start your day? Maybe midday Fallout lore? Hell, right before bedtime? Doesn't get any better than this. If you like this, check out the Patreon. There's a link in the description below. If you want to have your voice heard, if you want me to do a certain piece of lore, the best way to get in contact with me is through the Patreon. The people who are on screen right now, I gotta thank them. Thank you to these fine folks right now. Because of them, the show can continue to grow and get bigger and better. And if you want to check it out, from the $1 tier to the $10 tier, your voice is heard every single week. I filmed the full Atomic Radio Hour podcast episodes live in our Discord. Hey, you know what? While you're here, check out the Discord. There should be a link in the description below. Check out my Twitter. Check out the show's Twitter. Come hang out. It's a good time. My name has been Vince. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you to the Patreon. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.